In this video, we're going to learn about multiplication and division algebraic expressions. We'll have 3 important learning goals that we'll need to cover in the course of this video. The learning goals are: understand the difference between multiplication and division situations, write algebraic expressions for multiplication and division based on word phrases and situations, and you'll need to evaluate the algebraic expressions for the given values of variables. Okay, now on your paper, what I want you to do is copy down a table like I have here, and you might need to pause if you need a little bit of extra time so that you can write down what you need. We're going to highlight the key differences between multiplication and division situations. First, we're going to talk about multiplication. With multiplication, the biggest thing is that you're starting out with 2 small groups, or 2 groups, period. Then you'll be asked to find, in all multiplication situations, no matter what the situation is, you will always be asked to find the total amount. Whether that's the total amount of money, the total amount of objects, the total amount of people, in a multiplication situation, you will always be asked to find the total amount. Some important clue words: in addition to being asked to find the total, you'll have each, per, groups of, packages of, and we'll just put etc. there, because you can really take it with any situation as long as you're starting out with 2 small groups and you're asked to find the total. Now with division, you are starting out with the total. You're not being asked to find the total. They will give you the total quantity first. So for instance, you'll be given a total number of something and you'll be asked to find, make sure you're writing this down, you'll be asked to find either the number of equal groups or the number in each equal group. So those are the key differences between multiplication and division. Division starts out with the total and asks you to break it up into smaller groups by dividing, while multiplication starts out with 2 small groups and asks you to find the total amount. Now, I didn't put clue words up for division because they're actually the same as multiplication. What you have to do as a student and as a reader is to read the problem carefully and decide what the problem is doing, because you're going to see a lot of the same clue words. And the most important thing for you to do is to figure out, am I being asked to find the total or am I starting with the total? And that's going to be your biggest help. Next, we're going to solve a problem in which you will have to decide what type of situation it is, and then you'll have to write an algebraic expression and solve. And we're going to do 2 of these before the end of the video. Now again, you don't have to write the problem down word for word, but it will be important to write down clue words, copy the problems, and solve them along with me. So here goes. Kiera works for the Weirton Daily Times and is assigned a certain number of stories to report, S, for each month. If she gets paid $55 for each story, write an algebraic expression for the total amount of money Kiera will be paid. So first we're going to start out by underlining some clue words here. We have a certain number of stories, which we're going to be letting equal S, because we don't know how many stories at first that she's going to be able to write. And then we also have each right here. And she gets paid $55 for each story, and they are asking us for an algebraic expression to find the total amount of money Kiera will be paid. So we have a number of stories, S, and $55 for each story, and they're asking us to find the total. So if you remember from our last table that we had written together, if you're given the 2 small parts and you're being asked to find the total, we're going to be multiplying here. So this is a multiplication situation. So we're going to start off with what we know. We know that Kiera gets paid $55 for each story she wrote. And we already said that we're going to multiply, so we can put our little multiplication sign there. For each story she writes, and she writes a certain number of stories that we don't know. So that's what we're letting equal s. So we have 55 times s as our algebraic expression. Two other ways we can write that algebraic expression are 55 times, and we can use a raised dot for multiplication instead of the x, times s that way. Or we can also use 55 times s. And we know that whenever there is a number and a variable right next to each other with no sign, that means still to multiply. We're going to be asked to evaluate our algebraic expression if Kiera is assigned to write 32 stories in 1 month. That's going to mean that our s, or our variable, is now going to be replaced with 32. So we're going to go back to our problem. We're now going to take this s right here and replace it with 32. So our new problem is going to be 55 times 32. And when they tell us to evaluate, that means to solve it. So we're going to solve it off to the side. 55 times 32. When we start multiplying, 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1, which is 11. We bring our 0 down. 3 times 5 is 15, and we can carry the 1. 3 times 5 is 15, and then 15 plus 1 is 16. And then we add them up. 0, 6, 7, and 1. So that means if we were to answer in a complete sentence, Kiera would get paid $1,760 in that 1 month. Let's go on to our next problem. George has budgeted a total of $2,350 to remodel each of his children's bedrooms. If he spends the same amount on each child, A, write an algebraic expression that can help George figure out how much money he can spend on each of his children's rooms. So let's go ahead and find our clue words first. First, we know that we're starting out with a total, and that total is $2,350 on each bedroom. And he's spending the same amount on each child, A. We don't know how many children he has, but we're going to let that be A. So we're starting out with a total, and since that's the case and we're breaking it up into equal parts, we're going to divide here. So that's what we're starting out with, using our division, and we're dividing by A, which is the number of children that he has. And when we solve or evaluate this expression for whenever we find out A, we'll have how much he can spend on each of his children's rooms. Now we're going to evaluate your expression you wrote for George if he has 5 children's rooms to renovate. Our initial expression was 2,350 divided by A for his number of children. Two other ways we can write a division expression are 2,350, and we can use a fraction bar as a division sign over A. Another way you can write a fraction bar is to make a sideways slash like this. This also means to divide by. So we could also write 2,350 divided by A. Okay, let's go ahead and evaluate for our variable. We're now changing A, or replacing A, with 5 because George has 5 kids. So our new expression, which is going to be a numerical expression, is 2,350 divided by 5. So let's go ahead and evaluate that by doing long division. 2,350 divided by 5. Our dividend is 2,350, so make sure it goes on the inside of your box. 5 can go into 23 4 times. 5 times 4 is 20. 23 minus 20 is 3, and then we bring down the 5. 5 can go into 35 7 times. 5 times 7 is 35. And we bring down our last 0, and we still have to work with it. 5 goes into 0. 0 times 5 times 0 is 0, and we have 0 remainders. This means if we were to answer this question in a complete sentence, George can spend $470 on each of his children's rooms. Since we finished learning about multiplication and division expressions in situations, you have the following job. You need to ask yourself the following questions. Did I understand this video? Were there any questions that you had? If you have questions, write them down so we can discuss them in class tomorrow.